Greetings and salutations, travelers. Welcome back to the Inn of Planar Crossroads, and also, welcome back to our Around the Hearth series, where we sit down, share a little drink, and talk about all types of different things nerdy. So, this time, it is our special that we try to do some kind of special video for October, because October 23rd I have marked on my calendar as Fallout Day, because it is the day in the Fallout universe where the bombs dropped. So that's the appropriate day for it, I guess. Kind of a smart move on, I guess, not just Bethesda, but before that, when they were making Fallout to start with, to place it around Halloween so that they could get away with putting in a bunch of weird costumes in there if they wanted. So, but that aside, we are going to be discussing, as the title suggests, incorporating VATS into a tabletop style system. And so we're going to jump into that in just a minute, but first, as is traditional, announcements, always less than 5 minutes. You can time me. Here we go. As far as announcements for the Interplanetary Crossroads, we just have this special episode coming up, and then, of course, the releases of the rest of the archive series, where we're putting those back up so people can enjoy them. And that's about it. I don't have any spectacular or different changes along that line. Is there anything that you guys want to announce as far as Avenue Studios or the stuff you guys have going on?
I mean, I'd like to put in a plug for Jacob's Laboratory, a recent show that just released Open Legend system through Avenue Studios. I run the game. It's pretty fun. Kristen plays in it.
Yep.
Just listen to the episode 0 if you want to hear the gist. It's 15 minutes long. That's all I'm going to give you.
That's so great. And we also have some one-shots coming out. So we have one for Halloween, Christmas, and Thanksgiving and New Year's. So
yeah, I was told y'all filmed those all right back to back against each other, and I'm like, no, that's cheating. You gotta space those out. But fine.
It was great.
When you have so many kids.
Stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was good.
All right. Well, good deal. So you guys have those coming up on y'all's channel, Jacob's Ladder, and then the specials that are coming out for. I guess you have the Halloween special coming out first. So,
and to be clear, it's Jacob's Laboratory.
Laboratory. There you go. I get it. The association there in the brain.
Yes.
No worries. I'm sure that ladders will come up somewhere in the laboratory. So
yes,
because you got tiers and all that type of stuff. That's beside the point. Let's go ahead and get into our chat. So, you viewers, sit down. Roast your toes by the fire and get ready to share your Sunset Sarsaparilla or Nuka-Cola while we discuss VATS in tabletop systems. Do any of you guys want to start off, or do you want me to start off?
I have lots of thoughts.
Go for it.
All right, so the goal here, like you said, is to incorporate VATS into the system, preferably Open Legend, correct?
Any system, really, but I've incorporated in Open Legend before, so...
You've already done this before, yeah, that's right.
A little bit. So, if you guys have any input, I was going to let you guys set your ideas out there before I went into what I did.
See, for me, I like the idea of taking the resolve and making it a resolve points. So that as you activate your VATS and you choose your particular spot you choose, and that's a whole different part of the rule set, you actually cost 3 points of your resolve. And you restore your resolve like HP through resting. Because that's the cool part of the limiting VATS. So you're not automatically always getting it. So you take you get a resolve score in Open Legend?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Then you turn it and just make it resolve points. So there's still the resolve, but now it's also got a reserve for your internal strength.
Mm-hmm.
And then that becomes part of the VATS. And that's as far as activation goes. It costs 3 points, and you could always add more points or take out points, advantage, disadvantage, up to the LM or Legend Master. And then you go off of called shots. what are you targeting? You're targeting their weapon, their arm. I can't remember. It's been a little while since I played, but I know you can target like the head, torso, legs, arms. Can you target the weapon? I don't remember now.
If the LM says so, you can. So,
well, that's true.
But in VATS, you can shoot. You can shoot at the hand that's holding the weapon. I think.
Right.
Is how it works.
So then you would to me, that would be just a disarm Bane. You would just set Banes to whatever the target was.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, it was always my favorite part of the game because I wasn't a great first-person shooter, like in the moment. So, like, when the VATS system came on, I was like, okay, good, I can take a breather. But just to turn it into RPG-wise, didn't, like, old D&D do some kind of, like, percentage thing where it was, like, percentage to hit, and then you go off of that, like... So I thought, I know it doesn't work necessarily with Open Legend, but if you could use a percentage dice somehow, and you have what percentages, and if they like roll 100, then their head explodes, because that's what happens in Fallout. So like everything just explodes. Like
Kristen wants to get the bloody mess perk where it just all the viscera everywhere.
Everything just explodes if you get 100 or 95 to 100 there, but. Yeah, it's really cool.
So the few percentage-based games that I've read that I've been interested into, there's a lot of math and deep calculations that go into that because you take where you're starting out at 100%, then you subtract distances of each percentage, increment of distance, however you wish to set that as the LM, and then you take down the percentage. Now the target's small or armored or you're moving or they're moving. There's a lot of factors in there, so it's an interesting system. Now, can you do that all on the fly?
Mm-hmm.
I think that when we can get caught up because of the way that Fallout is presented. It's presented as a video game. We forget that dice and turn-based combat are just what the VATS system is in its core. It's like putting that into the video game. So we're actually taking what we like about VATS is not necessarily, that it's got the system right there that's percentage-based alone. Because we're already doing like the D20, rolling anything on a D20 is like a 5% chance. So you've got 5%. And so if you calculate it up, if you run it like math, you already have a percentage-based system in your tabletop. Now what you're looking for is the theming to get you where you want to go with your VATS style. And I worked that around with one of my players wanted to have that in his system. Basically, he was a ghoul cyborg kind of setup thing going on, where he had been modified after he had become a ghoul, or during that process at some point, and he had found a broken Pip-Boy and incorporated some of that into himself. So he had things kind of like that. So what I ended up doing was, based upon the calculations, he could roll a perception roll or something associated with that, and it would either add advantage or disadvantage on different things, just to keep it simple for what he was doing. And if he had found more technology and stuff to incorporate into that and maybe fix the Pip-Boy that's in his head, then it'd be like him upgrading and getting more of the functionality of the Pip-Boy, and it'd allow for that. So that's an option that you can do too in Open Legend. And your idea with resolve points does harken back to what they kind of do in Fallout. You got AP points, which are influenced by your endurance and your agility, I believe. So it works out kind of the same way. But for other systems, you're running... The theming is going to be a little fun to deal with. I think a way that it can be worked without having to have a player, especially in another system that's very feat heavy like Pathfinder or Dungeons and Dragons, is giving them an item that they can slowly get used to and upgrade that allows them to have access to those improved called shot type of feats a certain amount of times per day based upon, their particular score, whatever the GM and the DM decide on that one, which is an option for Open Legend too. Open Legend has all the options, so it is an option for that too. But
right, because I could see, as you say that, I could picture, the player finding a Pip-Boy, like you were saying, and then slowly upgrading it. And then, but the charges would be the limitation. Charges per day or whatever you want to do, however you want to do that, would work that way too in the Open Legend and Dungeons & Dragons and Pathfinder.
Mm-hmm. And that would let Kristen get the satisfaction of getting her called shot, head, advantage, all that type of stuff, so that she could see the head, the brain matter fly everywhere and stuff like that.
Well, and that's where, and not that I want to derail, I love Open Legend. But, can you hear me?
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Oh, I lost your guys' sound. Uh-oh.
Oh, no.
Oh, no.
Well, I can pick up from here.
I will not be silenced.
Well, I was also thinking, because Dan used to call me leg biter, because I would just shoot at their legs, so then they would fall down, and then they couldn't get me.
That's a valid strategy. Valid strategy.
So I was almost thinking, in Open Legend, you can kind of do the same thing with, an immobile Bane or something like that you can throw on them, and that's how it's seen, is that they lost ability to use their legs, and they fall down, and so they're, maybe their speed is halved or something like that. And so I thought that would be interesting.
Yeah. And it's interesting too because the ability to either tie that to the character or tie that to the item would present different drama in the. I'm pretty sure Jacob will be back in a second. Yeah, there we go. I'm pretty sure that tying that to an item would present actually more drama than tying that to the character itself. The abilities to invoke those Banes with Open Legend or to do those called shots in those other systems and then get those extra benefits. And dirty tricks is what they use in Pathfinder, so it might be a way to do those dirty tricks. If it's to an item, then you could have a very sought-after item just hanging off of your wrist. Because we kind of overlook that in Fallout because we always get a Pip-Boy of some kind. But Pip-Boys actually aren't very common in Fallout. We just think they are because the protagonist always gets one. Everybody else they don't necessarily get one. So allowing that to be attached to that could add drama for the game itself also. Can't hear what you're saying, Jacob, but if you fiddle around with the plug-in, it might be the attachment on the headphones. Sometimes that messes up. But
so would it give you advantage, the item itself for the Pip-Boy?
If it was to tie to an item, at least for Open Legend, you would probably want to discuss with your LM what part you want to lean into first before you tinker with it and upgrade it, maybe. Because you don't want to necessarily have full access to everything that a Pip-Boy can give you, because it can give you a whole bunch of advantages. So you would probably want to tinker with it and say, well, I want to do more called shots type of thing. And so you could work around to see where it could give you access to those things. We hear you.
Okay.
Hear you now.
I don't know what happened.
I don't know.
So what I was trying to get at was with Savage Worlds, it has called shots and it has advantages and based in the system. On top of it also has the power points. So plugging Fallout into that system would be really easy, I think. But to pull from that, and I think it's kind of what you were saying, you could do it with the items really easy. And I like the idea of it being a dramatic effect. You find the item and not everybody gets it. But if you wanted your whole squad, your whole team, or however you may call it, to be suited up to do VATS, you could just do it as a generic. That's what they gain. Build a feat based off of it too, and then you could do multiple tiers of a feat or add another feat, so that people can diverge in different directions with it.
Mm-hmm. And that would allow for multiple users of a Pip-Boy, like if multiple people had Pip-Boys, to branch off into those different things and specialize. Because players don't like to share different spotlights and abilities with other players. Like, no, there's only one rogue. There's only one rogue. No, I do the traps. You do the slicing, barbarian. You don't get to sense trap. No, or stuff like that. That's not so common anymore, I don't think. But those well-defined roles were once a thing.
Well, yeah, because I think with roles now, they have such variety inside the role that you can really make a tanky mage.
Yeah. And you really weren't doing that in 1st and 2nd edition. You were lucky to get your mage up to level 2.
Past character creation.
Yeah. You get 1 spell a day. You cast that one sleep spell. All right, guys, I'm done. What are we doing now?
But I definitely think that incorporating Fallout into Open Legend wouldn't be that hard, partially because a lot of it would be narrative based. With the advantage and disadvantage system too, it can heavily affect the outcome.
Mm-hmm. And that's something that more narrative games do have an advantage at, is that you can have those epic explosion of the leg and it just kind of falls off and they're hobbling around, and those narrative beats actually do give mechanical assistance and stuff. That's something that can get missed out on in more crunchier games like Pathfinder and Dungeons and Dragons, because you can miss out on that because there's a mechanical thing for everything.
Yep.
And that's not necessarily bad if that's what you're looking for. Some games benefit from that, but I'm not sure that Fallout necessarily would. Now, there is an elephant in the room. There is a devoted Fallout tabletop game.
Yep.
I have not gotten enough exposure to it to say, oh yeah, that's the definitive system to play Fallout. One, because I don't like to go out and buy a bunch of different systems that I know I'm not necessarily going to end up playing.
Guilty.
Yeah. And 2...
Because I just literally, after having the conversation with Kristen yesterday, I went and bought the PDF.
Oh, there you go. All right. Done.
Man, those dice, though, they look really cool.
They do. I sent the link to Kristen.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's a really... I like the idea of having a devoted system for Fallout, especially since post-apocalyptic RPGs are fun in general, depending on how you play them, and you can work that system and use it in all of those different ways if you want to. But
the thing with... Go ahead, sorry.
But you do run the risk of, if having a devoted system, that you've put that money into that system, so that system's what you're going to be themed around unless you play narrative pinball with it and bounce around to different things. Which is one of the reasons I don't... Like, if I want to play a swords and sorcery game, I tend to go, and I want some rules with it, I tend to go to Pathfinder or Dungeons and Dragons. If I want something more open and more malleable, especially for my own settings to play in, then Open Legend is what I pick, because I know I can do whatever I want to in that with some tinkering. Which I'm going to be doing anyway in the other one if I try to retheme it. So
exactly, 1,000% correct. I think Dungeons and Dragons 5th edition has a good chassis to add stuff to and create your own world, but I definitely agree with you. Open Legend is streamlined at it.
Mm-hmm.
But because I don't incorporating VATS in any system. Kind of like you were saying, you're already kind of doing it through the tactical turn-based. So it ends up being a lot more narrative. So it fits really well in Open Legend because you can, like you were saying, narratively describe that situation, and that's what you roll for.
I want that, like, that something that would signify the criticalness, which I guess would be if you got a nat 20, that would be the explosion or a critical hit essentially. But I was also wondering, would it work with companion, kind of like what Brick does with Ajax? I didn't know if it could work like that with the Pip-Boy.
You can build a Pip-Boy. If you don't want to build a devoted item, you could build a Pip-Boy out of the companion itself and just say that's what it is. Now, I'm not sure. I get really tempted to do things as an LM, if I know something's really important, I like to play that up with with my players. So you do run the risk if it's not an item devoted to itself, or if it's not directly tied to your character, that extra character, something could happen to it, and then you are down, which is one of the drawbacks with the companion build in general. But that build is possible to make it out, and for the critical portion that you're talking about, you would, in Pathfinder, there's like expanded critical and stuff like that, and there's variants of that within Open Legend, and that could be something that, like with Jacob's suggestion of having a kind of feat tree built around using the Pip-Boy, that are different things that it gives you access to that you can invest in, much like the special chart in Fallout. You can invest down those things and make that the way you work it out on what you're investing into.
I like that. So in my head, as we're talking, just pops in my head. If you wanted, depending on what kind of world you were building, Kristen, if your players, if all of you wanted the Pip-Boy, you could actually give a free feat, so to speak, and give them all a companion low level. So then they could increase their Pip-Boy in the VATS system through increasing the companion if they wanted to. Then from there, the companions can all be different. Just thinking about that'd be kind of cool if that's the kind of game you want to run.
Maybe they all maybe they all go down into a vault and find Pip-Boys in various forms of various rates of decay or destruction after something happened in the vault. And now they each have a Pip-Boy, but it's not fully functional, and now they get to trick it out and play with it and mess with it and make it into their own thing. So that could be I could see that working a lot better than trying to make a single devoted item that gives you all access to what all a Pip-Boy could do, because a Pip-Boy is basically a menu system for the world around you. It's like for Pathfinder, for Fallout. Because you're talking about GPS mapping, you're talking or the essentially GPS mapping. It gives you your current location. Not just of your current location, but of the map that you're on. So, I guess some kind of echolocation. I don't think they ever fully explain that very well in Fallout, so that is one of the larger technological plot holes in there. But, I mean, it's Fallout, and you don't know what they got. And then there's...
The game's just a lot of fun to play.
Yeah. Then
but that would work too.
Stat system and stuff like you got your stat system and stuff like that. You've got your inventory system, all of the different, like the VATS system itself. So that's a lot of stuff to include in one item. So maybe doing it like with that companion system and they have their own devoted like little list of things to build down or stuff like that. Like these are easily accessible. You could do it a lot. You could do a lot with it that way.
Mm-hmm. It'd be like its own their own character sheet for their Pip-Boy, which kind of is the special, so you can kind of change it up how you want to use it. Because I would always sneak, so I was huge into that. Just sneak around.
Everybody ends up a sneak archer.
Yeah, sniper.
What are we playing, Skyrim now? No.
I mean, that's what would happen if they added bows into Fallout. I mean, they got some high-powered bows, technologically wise, so, and you could do it. But
I think it would be really cool, too, because then it would work well with, like, the precog or the, stuff like that, too, because You could. It's really an interesting concept, and you could go off of the resolve points and call them AP, and they have their own set. The Pip-Boy has its own set essentially, because you have the score of the companion. So you're not even pulling out of yourself; you're pulling out of your Pip-Boy, your companion. And that way, there's a small. So that adds to the limitation, because if you're giving, because I think it'd be fun, and that's probably how I would run a Fallout game. But I'd give each person the companion feat at base level, and then they can expand it from there later on narratively by spending feat points. But because you are giving that gives them they're a little stronger than your average Joe. So to limit that, you could do the resolve points or AP. That way, if it runs out, that's it until you rest.
Yep.
Oh, okay.
So the way there's a little limitation, because with Open Legend, sometimes you can become really powerful, and I know you can counter that. The LM has plenty of ways to counter that. But because you're giving them a free gift, so if you just limit it with AP or resolve points or however you want to label it,
some sort of resource that has to be managed.
Yeah, right. Because because you're giving them a free attack, you're free, or however you want to spell it out.
Yeah, that's what I was wondering. Does it get its own turn, or is it something where it just helps the player on their turn in combat?
Well, I did it when I played with Kane, and he had access, like you said, like you mentioned, Jacob, to precog. He had access to that through the Pip-Boy by running probability numbers, so he could access that extraordinary ability through that. And if you're running it as a companion, I would say that Kane's example is if you're running it inside the character itself. The companion example, I would say that the companion takes the same turn initiative as the person, because it's not a companion that's separate and apart from you. Very much like you said with Brick and Ajax. They are very much the same character, but it's built in a way, the character is built in a way mechanically where he has a companion feat. So there's options to do that, and I figure that it would function a lot more like Brick and Ajax than it would Tiri and
Pim
Pam.
Yeah.
Now, what you could do too is you could say, well, the Pip-Boy companion can't directly attack; he can only do assisting things. Like you were saying, you would roll a perception check off the Pip-Boy, and then it would give you an advantage on your attack.
Now,
on your character's attack. Sorry, go ahead.
Mm-hmm.
Something that might need a bit of balancing if you use the companion, or I guess you could reflavor that in Pathfinder or Dungeons and Dragons as a summoner feat. Reflavor the summoner if you're going to use him as a secondary companion. You're going to have action economy come into a big play, because if everybody has one, that means they're taking twice as many turns as the enemy. And even if those turns aren't based around doing damage, they're based around gaining advantages. So you'd want to play with that. A fully functioning Pip-Boy would be pretty powerful as a companion feat type of thing.
And that's where I was trying to go with the limitations of the resolve points or AP. Now, as far as Pathfinder goes, I know with 2nd edition until you get later in levels, your action economy gets split. So you end up having to spend one action, because in Pathfinder 2nd edition you get the 3 action economy. Have you researched it at all?
I'm not as familiar with it as I am with 1st edition, but yes, that would be a limiting factor in your
because you have to spend one of your actions to give it actions. So, and you only give it 2, so you end up only with 4. So you only really gain 1 more action, which yes is a big difference. But I think it would work well in Pathfinder 2nd edition. Now, as far as Dungeons and Dragons, 5th edition, action economy would become quite messy. I think with the companion, they get a full turn, move, bonus action, and action. So you'd have to figure out how to limit that.
Yep. I think you're right. It would definitely be a lot easier in 2nd edition Pathfinder than it would in 1st edition Pathfinder or any of the previous editions of Dungeons and Dragons.
Right. I think it would balance and fit well in Open Legend, though. I think that would be, because it would be a lot more narrative too.
I do like the... If you're not going to use the official system or anything, then I do think that Open Legend is your better fit. I'm not sure if there's a kind of like summoner equivalent. I'm sure there is in Savage Worlds, but I'm not sure if it functions more like 2nd edition Pathfinder or if it functions like D&D. Because if it functions like D&D, we run into the action economy problem again. So
right. Yeah, I mean, I'm not... Savage Worlds is a newer dive for me, and I haven't dove into the summoning companion feats yet. But, like Open Legend, you could narratively build anything you want. So
okie dokie. So you could put a resource point of some kind in there.
Right. Well, they already have PowerPoints built into the system. So, because that's what's nice about Savage Worlds, it has that crunch in there. But,
yep.
Because you would run it as one of your powers, essentially.
Okay. I get where you're going now. Yeah. And then you would have that be the resource that you manage instead of in place of your AP.
Yep.
And so you'd be able to mitigate the game breakiness. You know, Kristen couldn't snipe all of their legs at once. She would have to take her turn. Yeah. Okay.
Yep. And then you'd spend PowerPoint, and then when you run out of those, you got to rest. Which is much like the VATS system. And that's where it would be cool to incorporate. Because, I mean, I've always dreamed of doing a more crunchy Open Legend version where you have stamina points, or I like calling them, resolve points, and there's guard and toughness. I think it was made like toughness points. I had a different name for it. I had to go look at the document. But it's kind of fun to have that limitations. And I know narratively that's really easy to do. If they roll a critical fail or however you wish to roll, or the enemy rolls a critical success, you can easily break their equipment and stuff like that and limit them. But it is fun to have a resource pool to manage.
Yeah, I agree. Like, with the spells and everything, it's just you just keep casting them. I kind of almost wish that there was like a limit to it.
Well, I'm kind of, I'm not old school. I like what you guys are talking about with the limitation on especially magic, because if you think about the setting and you think about if magic actually existed in a specific place at a specific time, that would be super broken. I mean, even something like prestidigitation, a cantrip, would be super broken. You can fix anything that's, small, but still anything.
Yeah.
So you just fix this piece of this thing today, and then you wait and you fix this thing of it tomorrow, and it's like...
Right.
So, yes, very much in favor of the limitation on magic. I do understand why Open Legend does the way it does with extraordinary abilities and then non-extraordinary abilities, and how it doesn't do that, because it's more about telling the story.
Correct.
Yeah.
And it balances out nicely in that sense, because if you're limiting the magic, how are you giving them benefits? Because anybody can swing a sword and get the same amount of dice. But it's all about setting and story, like you were saying.
I miss the strategy part of it, though. Like, you have this certain amount of this level, this certain amount of this level, and I like that strategy part of it, which is also kind of like why I like the VATS system too. There's like that same, like, you have a certain amount of resource and you got to use it specific in a certain amount of time and very specifically, or you lose out.
Yeah, I think that the incorporation of the VATS system is not difficult for our tabletop games as long as there is a resource to spend.
Right.
Because
or you run it narratively.
You run it narratively. Because, like we talked about, you're already playing a percentage-based game. We just disguise it with pretty math rocks and stuff. So we make it fun with math rocks.
Yeah.
Because math rocks. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So, hey, if you come to the channel, you're coming for the dad jokes. We all know it's true. It's true. Thumbs up for the dad jokes.
That and kitties.
Yes, goodies.
Cats for clicks.
Yes.
Yes.
No, I've always dreamed of running a Fallout mini series. I think it'd be so much fun. I know that the guys over there, if you guys have heard of Cogent RPG, they ran I don't think it was just a one shot in Cogent, but it was mostly narrative, which is beautiful. I mean, don't get me wrong, I love it. But when you think of Fallout, you also think of them gory moments where you're blowing somebody's arm off or whatever it may be, and it is fun to add that in with a system that fits it.
Mm-hmm. Now, I warn my characters anytime that they want something. I say, if you can do it, the enemies can do it too.
Yes.
What happens when they come up against another past vault dweller who made it through whatever massacre went and happened in that vault where they got their gear from? Yeah, that would be interesting, because that Pip-Boy would probably be more functional than their Pip-Boy, less damaged. So, yeah.
And that's why I always tell Dan that too whenever we're creating items and stuff like that together. And we always start worrying about balance. I'm like, well, remember, the other side can have something to counter it. I mean, that's the beauty of being an LM, and and it adds to the fun. It adds to the challenge, and especially when there's a nemesis involved, and you can like slowly each growing up and taking each other down or whatever it may happen. It really adds to the fun also.
And it could be the boss edges kind of thing. Like if he has a nicer Pip-Boy, he can have more turns. His Pip-Boy recharges faster, and
Oh, that's a really cool. That's a really cool idea of the boss edge. I like that.
Yep. Because I think boss edges. I've not got to that level of play with my personal games of Open Legend, of where I've really dug into the boss edge versus legend point, because I'm very tempted to say, you know what, if the players get legend points, the bosses get legend points, and can do the same thing. I really like that. I do that in my systems.
Yep.
And when I'm running something, so like hero points are supposed to be something. Yeah, hero points are something in Pathfinder 1E. And I told the players, okay, if you get hero points, they get villain points, basically, like you said, or something like that, some equivalent, because it's only fair. You want to play on an even field, right? You want this to be a game where you're actually overcoming. Because if it's not, if it's about telling a story, then the dice is fun, but the story comes first. That's understandable. I like games that tell a story. I've never TPK'd. No. Well, I've never TPK'd on camera. I'll say that. So people die off screen all the time, but
it's the risk that makes the game more fun. If they have the same abilities as the players.
Yep. So whether it's a boss edge or that boss or whatever gets legend points because of their Pip-Boy, either way makes for a much more threatening moment, especially when the players don't know it's coming and they're like, oh, it's going to be like a boss edge. He uses a legend point. What? A legend? How many does he have? Does he have the feat where you can have more than one legend point? Well, what are we doing here? Does all the enemy party over there have legend points? Are they? Because if you're fighting against an actual party, like, Defiant Riot, makes sense that is a player setup, and they have legend points as well. They are a completely different party to you. So
the Brotherhood of Steel shows up.
Yeah. Oh man, they'd be wrecking house, because that's what their power armor's for. It's like a Pip-Boy inside of an Ajax.
In the armor, yeah.
And not that I wanted to plug Savage Worlds back into here, but what's really cool about Savage Worlds too is that they're called bennies, or benefits. You get little tokens at the beginning. Well, the LM gets them, or the Legend Master or narrator, whatever DM gets them too. And we were talking about earlier, they have a card initiative, and when a Joker's drawn, everybody at the table gets a benny also. So it's kind of a cool. So that means now the LM can only spend bennies on like boss or major characters, not just your common zombie. But it's I mean, obviously you can do whatever you want, but that's normally the rule is how it's built in. But it's something cool to think about, and I love the idea of your Pip-Boy having a boss edge and using legend points. even for the LM side, it just adds a narrative effect, and like the Brotherhood of Steel, and I don't know, what a massacre that would be.
Well, I mean, can you imagine if you had a character? Because the most overpowered stat in Fallout is not agility, and it's not strength. It's luck. Luck is the most overpowered ability. Mm-hmm. So if you have your Pip-Boy, and you've got the hero point, you've got the legend points, feats, you've got the lucky feat, you've got those. You go down the luck tree with this boss character, who just happens to be, luckily, right there where the players are, and he's like presents this threat to their particular goals, and they're like, you can try your luck. And he's even got he's went full into it. He's got the 4-leaf clover stitched into his stuff. Got a paint job on got a gold paint job or something like that on his Pip-Boy, because he's just lucky. It doesn't matter if it shines, because he's just lucky because it ricochets off, because that's a feat in Pathfinder. And in there is a ricochet feat in Pathfinder, but in Fallout, there's that ricochet feat where the bullet bounces off and goes back and hits an enemy. That would be so annoying for a player to hit, and then they pop their ricochet feat, and then oh no, you actually hit somebody else in the party. Oh no, it's so bad.
And you could run that like a defend action too.
Yeah, it basically functioned like a redirected defend action.
So you could give him one free. His Pip-Boy could give him a one free defend action.
So there you go.
Part of his luck. I mean, just little things I'm thinking in my head of. That would be really fun. Mm-hmm. Now, as far as the VATS system go, I mean, you could easily just tie in, Banes too, or hope to roll 10 and over and it blows their arm off. I mean,
because if you're tying it to a resource that they have to manage and only get basically once a day, that resource refills, then it's a lot easier to say, okay, this can do more narratively than just something you use every day, especially if your sessions usually span over several hours in a day versus today, tomorrow, the next day. You've got all those 3 days spanned in.
Yeah. And I agree, and that's kind of that was kind of my whole, I wanted to limit it a little bit, but give it more oomph when you're using it. Because it is exciting, the VATS, and I just love when it zooms in a little bit and it slows down. It makes me want to play.
Yes.
Zooms and slows. Yep. All right. Well, we've been talking for about almost 45 minutes now on how to incorporate VATS and really Pip-Boys into your system, into your tabletop gaming, without actually going and buying the direct, hey, this is the official Fallout tabletop game. So, hopefully, you viewers have found that particularly useful. Any final remarks from you guys before we sign off?
Thank you for letting me brainstorm with you.
Yep.
Yeah. Get those ghouls.
Get the ghoul. Yeah, those are the ones you really need to snipe their legs, because they'll just run at you, and it's like, well, stop moving.
Exactly.
So, all right. Well, we hope you have enjoyed our discussion and your time around the hearth with us, and that your beverage of choice, having been sufficiently drained, your toes sufficiently warmed by the fire, and your minds sufficiently stimulated, we come to the end of our Around the Hearth. As always, have a great day, God bless, and enjoy. Bye.
This content was made possible by travelers and viewers like you. Thank you.
Okie dokie.
You, Michelle.
She said hi, Michelle.
Oh.
You can't see her, can you?
I did in the window.
In the window. She shut the light off. She doesn't like being on camera.
There we
Thanks
go.
for letting me join you.
Yep.
Yeah, now I want to play Fallout again.
I know, it makes you want to go fire it up.
It made me sad about 76 though, because I was like,
Ugh.
I couldn't do it. I don't want to play with other people.
I'm so mad. I made the mistake of pre-ordering it for both my wife and I, thinking we would love it, and it was not enjoyable. I mean, it wasn't. It wasn't terrible. I mean, it had its ups and downs. My one friend really enjoyed playing it.
Yeah,
but it just wasn't quite the same.
I would have been okay. I would have wanted it to be good, even though I wouldn't necessarily have bought it and played it, because I've got a thing about games, especially as I get older, where if I want to buy it, I want to own it so that I have it, which means it doesn't matter if the Bethesda shuts down the servers, I still can play Fallout 4 or, New Vegas. So I wasn't going to go in and do it, but other people would have liked it. Except they messed up the lore so bad that I was just like, no, I'm not patronizing that. I'm not buying something where you say the Brotherhood of Steel, who hasn't even been formed yet, shouldn't even be in existence yet on this side of the continent, is tromping in and being the heroes of the Appalachian. No. I mean, that Country Roads just fit perfect. The whole feel of it started to be like, that's really cool. And I like the feel of that. I like the feel of Appalachia. I'm glad that they did it in a place that wasn't all torn down and destroyed, because really the inner part of the U.S. wouldn't be as destroyed as the outer edges. And it'd be like, that would work. You could do that. It's like, man, didn't do it. And then you played around with the lore and you messed it up. It was a perfect setup too. There's an actual thing there in real life where they've got that old bunker, and it would have made sense. But nope, fan-made stuff still beats out Bethesda again. Yep.
No, it's definitely because I love the Old Country Road song. That's what got me hyped. And then,
still like the song.
I love the song.
Play
I
it.
really wanted it to be a better game than it was.
Yeah, I think they were like trying to do Destiny, and it just wasn't.
Everybody's trying to get in that live service gaming, and I think like you were saying, what sucks about that is when they shut down the servers,
it's gone.
You're done. All that time and energy you put in there is gone.
Yeah.
And that's hard, like you were saying. I was just looking for something to troll around with the wife and get her into the Fallout world, because she's never played a Fallout game. And I was thinking, this would be perfect for one we could play together. But
it was my pregnancy game. Like, I was pregnant with Torin for Fallout 3 and pregnant with Asher, I think, for Fallout 4, New Vegas. I'm not sure. So they have anxiety issues. That's why, because I'm like in the middle of the night, like freaking out because of the ghouls and stuff. Like, causing damage to him. Like, I hope they're okay.
I remember when we were playing. When we'd come over to your house there and play, and we'd come in and you'd be playing Fallout. When we were pregnant with Torin, I remember that very much.
Yeah, when I had time.
Yeah, I know.
I still had time, even just with Torin and then being pregnant with Asher, but now it's just like, I don't know, we have maybe a half hour.